So today we'll talk about Adcore's third quarter results. As you know, Adcore is a position of mine. This company is listed on the TSX Venture ticker ADCO and on the OTC ticker ADCOF, okay? And well, as I mentioned, today we'll go through this company's third quarter results. Before we begin, nothing in this video is investment advice, okay? And with that, let's start, right? But before we get to the numbers, I would like to do a brief overview here about this company's business model, about what it does, right? So let's first talk about that. So Adcore is mainly a marketing agency. So we have here a service-based business model, not so scalable, right? With medium margins. So it's not a highly attractive business for me to invest, at least, right? However, over the past few years, the company has been investing in creating some apps which have much higher margins than the service business and which are also much more scalable. And these apps have been growing a lot since their creation, right? Since they appeared. And what do I think is going to happen? So I think this technology division, these apps will continue to grow. And with that, first, Adcore's revenue should grow and this company's margins should also expand. So in other words, we have here a service business that is slowly transitioning into a SaaS kind of business. And for me, it seems that the market is not seeing that. After all, Adcore's enterprise value, as you can see here, stands at only 3.5 million, while this company is delivering 32 million in revenue. So for me, the market is completely ignoring this company and also ignoring the transition Adcore is going through. But anyway, this was a brief overview of this company, of this investment thesis. And with that said, let's look at Adcore's third quarter numbers. So let's come here to the quarterly numbers. So, as you can see, Adcore in the third quarter delivered 7.7 million in revenues, which compared to the last quarter, to the second quarter, is an improvement. After all, the company delivered $6.4 million in revenue in the second quarter of 2025. And when compared to the same period of 2024, Adcore is pretty much at the same level. But let's always remember that we still have the fourth quarter, which tends to be the strongest one in this space, in the marketing space. As Adcore CEO says here, I would say one more thing that investors need to take into consideration, that the big quarter, Q4, is literally happening right now. So we still have a lot to show up in 2025. Now moving on, talking now about the company's gross margin. As you can see here, Adcore's gross margin in the last quarter stood at 40.2%, so gross margin dropped when compared to the second quarter of 2025 and also when compared to the third quarter of 2024. And honestly, that worries me a bit. After all, in my view, gross margin should be going up. Because if the technology segment is growing, since this segment has a higher gross margin, well then the overall gross margin should be going up, right? But I'm really curious about why gross margin declined. I mean, the only explanation that comes to my mind is that the tech division must have represented a smaller share of total revenue. And I actually even asked the company about that, about the third quarter's revenue mix. But I asked them whether the apps were still gaining traction. And this is what they answered me. This is what the company answered. The apps continue to gain traction, but the legacy business still represents the majority of our revenues at this stage. But with that, we cannot tell if the technology division has grown or not. In any case, let's see what happens in the fourth quarter. Now moving on, talking about Adcore's operating profits, or in this case, operating losses, right? As we can see here, in the last quarter, Adcore posted a negative 3.6% operating margin. However, that's not a huge loss, right? I mean, if the company continues to grow, if it grows just a bit, and if its gross margin expense, this number here can easily turn positive, especially since the company is reducing costs. As you read here, another thing worth mentioning during this quarter is that we saw like a significant improvement in the cost line items. Research and development went down 10% year-on-year, SG&A went down 12% year-on-year, and actually adjusted EBITDA improved 56% year-to-date. So yeah, I can easily see this number here getting positive. And if that happens, since the company doesn't have any other big expense, it won't be difficult to see this number here too, net income, getting positive too. Now moving on, talking now about Adcore's balance sheet. So the company ended the quarter with 6.5 million Canadian in net cash. So their net cash position went down when compared to the previous quarter from 8.2 million to 6.5 million. However, I think their cash position is going to improve. And I say that because it went down due to the fact that Adcore has burned cash last quarter. As you can see here, Adcore's operating cash flow came at negative 1.5 million Canadian. So that's why the company's net cash position went down. However, I think this is going to reverse. I think their net cash position is going to recover because, as the company told me, the negative operating cash flow this quarter is mainly a timing difference between payments and receipts rather than an underlying change in the business. We expect these timing gaps to close moving forward. So operating cash flow, as far as I understood, was negative because of a timing issue. So I believe that the company will deliver positive operating cash flows in the coming quarters, which ultimately should make their cash position stronger. So these were the highlights of Adcore's Q3 numbers. In summary, revenue is still at the same place, gross margin declined, but the company is close to break-even. And lastly, Adcore's net cash position decreased as the company had to cover its negative operating cash flow. So to close this video, in my opinion, these were average results, okay? But with that said, I still believe Adcore can grow in the full year of 2025 when compared to 2024. But to see that, we'll have to wait until the fourth quarter results come out. Now, one last thing I forgot to mention is this. As I said earlier, as I mentioned, Adcore has been cutting costs, has been reducing expenses. And my concern was that these cuts could end up impacting sales. So I asked the company about that, as we can see here, right? As I said, won't the reductions in research and development and SG&A eventually impact sales? From what I saw, you reduced marketing expenses quite a bit. Are these reductions temporary, or should we expect costs to remain at this lower level in the coming quarters? And well, that's what the company said. We've put a stronger emphasis on cost efficiency, and the results are now starting to show across several expense lines. At the same time, we are very mindful of keeping the right balance between cost reductions and their impact on sales. Based on what we see today, these reductions are not affecting sales performance, and we will increase investments where needed to support growth. So for me, it seems that these savings won't be negative for the company and for its growth. Anyway, with that said, that's it for today, and see you next time.